Okay, with the filmmaker of Field Report, Flack Family Farm. I almost said Black Family Farm. Field Report, Flack Family Farm, because it's a black and white film. Travis Limoge, basically talking to me from Vermont right now. We learned before the podcast started, we're both border kids, right? You're the border on Quebec and Vermont, and the border of Ontario and New York. So there we go.
Yeah,
Different
yeah.
perspectives. Well, you're the American, I'm the Canadian version, right?
There
So
you go. From the other side, but we saw the same thing, right?
yeah,
So
I'm
the
about 10
border,
years older than you, but when I was growing up, before 9/11, we used to cross the border and just wave to the customs guy and say,
it's
"Hi,
the
how you
same.
doing?"
I'm 40 and we grew up in the we used to be able to just drive the same thing right across the border. There's actually one in this town, I think it's called Stansted or something like that. You drive right across the border, across a bridge, a guy's sitting in a little shack and you just wave at him and say we're going to get poutine or some Labatt
You really jumped on
50.
that stereotype, eh? Yeah, so
Exactly,
yeah.
100%.
That's so funny getting poutine because there's nothing else to do in Quebec except to get poutine, I guess, right?
No, you can get creton also.
So, but the drinking age
Bagels.
was 18, right? When
Yeah,
you,
so when we were
yeah,
Yeah, so when we were kids, that was as soon as you turned 18 and you had a car, you're driving across the border into
yeah,
Quebec to get into all kinds of mischief. But it's cool growing up on the border. It's cool growing up on the border. Now I live in Mexico and I lived in Los Angeles for many years. And um, it's weird the Mexican border versus the Canadian border. Um, it just felt almost invisible here, right? When we were kids, we could
yeah.
just drive across the border. It was pretty easy, and there's not really that much of a difference between either side of the border. Where in Southern California, for example, it's pretty stark contrast between what's going on in the San Diego side and what's going on in the Tijuana side or anywhere that you go across that southern border. So
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting, right? But it's like because like as I growing up, I tell people now like about how the U.S. American relations were when I was growing up. It's
yeah,
so different, right? So I could never imagined the where we are now in 2025. So, but
yeah,
yeah, but that's a film.
yeah.
That's another film in itself. Let's talk about the Field Report Flack Family Farm. The first curious question I have for you, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, why did you always intend it to be in black and white?
Yeah, so the idea when we started, I'm a chef. I started in the kitchen when I was 13. I've spent the past 15 years of my career really dedicated to researching and implementing community-based solutions to the industrial food complex, essentially finding ways for restaurants everywhere in any environment that I've been in to work with local product year round. And one of the problems that I have or that I see and feel with food content or food film or food series is that generally they're pretty saturated. I mean, it comes with food and restaurants in general that there's a lot of gluttony in excess kind of drive the feeling, and so there's a lot of fast cuts, a lot of saturation in the film, and we thought that our intention, me and my partner who's the filmmaker Ryan, we thought that it would lend it black and white would lend itself to slowing down the process and really sinking into what you're watching and take away any of the elements that might draw your attention away from the message. And so we were inspired by black and white film and we thought it would be a cool format. That's also why we did a lot of why it feels a lot slower and a lot more intentional. So we'll continue the series in black and white, and we've got some other projects that we're working on in color, but it just felt right.
All right, so yeah, so Ryan is a Bora. He's the director of photography, the producer of the film. You're the director, writer. So you guys are kind of collaborators. You're kind of like kind of getting the. So this is the first of many then, this project?
Yeah, yeah. So the idea is that, I had been working with farmers for a long period of time and been trying to figure out how to capture the stories because I spend a lot of time on the farm just shooting the shit and working hand in hand with them. And I had a creative kitchen in Burlington, Vermont. I was just doing I had like a fermentation lab and I was kind of figuring out solutions to year-round food here in Vermont. And Ryan had a creative space inside the same building and we just connected and synergized on the storytelling. And so what we do now is it's essentially the two of us. Sometimes we have a sound guy and we've got a photographer with us on some trips, but we figured out a pretty good run and gun style. Pretty much everything is handheld with some long shots from tripods. and it's just me and Ryan. Me and Ryan go out in the field and we gather the story, and we usually spend 2 to 3 days with our subject. We just released another one from a grass-fed cattle company here, and then we were just down in Mexico in Guerrero, which will be in the coming months. We'll release a couple more of these field report document short documentaries.
Well, I loved your film, and what I loved about it the most is that it reminds me of like those the classic documentaries of like the 1970s when they were kind of figuring out, not that they weren't made before that, but they were kind of figuring out a new style. And you kind of just like it's almost like a fly in the wall kind of approach instead of being glitzing. I watch obviously a lot of documentary films, a lot of
Yeah.
short films where it's like they kind of throw it in your face, and not that there's anything wrong with those films, but they kind of throw it in your face, have a narration, and they kind of throw the thematic at you and say, this is what this film's about, the first 2 minutes. Where your film was like, okay, we're just gonna this is this farm, this is this guy, and this is what he does, and we can kind of fill in the blanks as an audience ourselves. And was that
Yeah,
kind of your intention making the
yeah,
film?
for sure. Yeah, for sure. Because I think as well, as you stated, a lot of documentary films, when you get into them, are speaking about a specific issue
Yeah.
and really dig, or they're telling you right away what the problem is and what problem they're going to be talking about. And it's a much more nuanced problem that we face, especially in a place like Vermont that's rural, that's been trying to keep its footing in a farming community for years, and battling the industrial food complex and battling these big agricultural projects that are coming in. It's a lot more nuanced, and it's a day-to-day life. It's not just There's not just a single problem that we can address and fix it. I wanted to have conversations with people that I wanted you to feel like you were there on the farm with me, and I wanted you to feel like you were experiencing what those people experience every day, and not just say this is the problem, this is how we fix it, or this is the problem and it can't be fixed, but kind of have a conversation and, like you said, let people glean their own knowledge from it. And I feel like it's a piece that you can watch several times, and each time get a new piece of information that might help you form your own opinion about how you and your community might want to move forward and solve the problems that we face.
There's some great shots in the film, especially I think about maybe halfway into the film where they're outside and they're doing the cabbage. It's cabbage, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's cabbage.
Okay. I just want to double check that. Because
Yeah.
it could be lettuce because we're watching black and white. I'm just kidding, but
Yeah.
but basically, but they're the kids sitting there like a classic like next generation farmer kids like sitting there on the wagon. He's like taking it in. He's like, oh, like what's going on here, right? This is the everyday living for him, right? And then, but they're doing it manually. They're just like they're picking it up from the soil and they're throwing it on the wagon. And then like it's like, is this still happening in like 2025? Are they still doing this?
Yeah, this is so Flack Family Farm, 40 years ago, Doug Flack moved there, and pitched some tents and built a house. He was a marine scientist, and he traveled the world and studied birds and their interaction with the ocean. And he moved there, or in the sea, and he moved there with his family and started this process then. And they're actually really committed to biodynamic farming, and biodynamic farming specifically follows a system of it follows the lunar cycles. So they're planting seeds on specific days at specific times, and they're harvesting at specific on specific days and specific times. And so they really stay true to the hand harvesting. And I feel like you get a much deeper connection with the soil when you're doing it. It's something that I learned that I hadn't really, you know, a lot of people are lettuces in general, you're harvesting by hand because they're um on organic farms because they're gentle, but the amount that they harvest and the system they have is the same system they've used for 40 years. So we go through the field and cut it all.
Yeah,
One guy picks it up, throws it to another guy. That guy puts it on on the wagon. It's
yeah.
like this is the system. They're doing it every year the same way. They've just figured it out, and there's no better way to do it. And so yeah, there's no reason not to keep doing the
My
thing that
first
works,
thought
right?
was that that's bad on the back. That must be tough on
Hmm.
the back.
Oh, it is for sure. But I think after a while of throwing, 10-pound cabbages, you get used to it. My back was definitely sore after 3 or 4 days working on the farm, so
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for those guys.
And they're yeah, they must be in amazing shape, right? So
Yeah, yeah, that's the other thing you see. They're only eating from that land, and they're really,
Yeah.
Zach talks about it in the film. Zach has been on the farm as working on the farm for 20 years, and he's actually taking the reins now as Doug Flack is a little bit older, and they're just super connected with the soil. That's their life. They're connected with that farm and that landscape, and so everything they do, I it's funny. I have a lot of conversations with farmers. I'm like, you guys should just call it farm fit. Everybody starts CrossFit gyms with tires and ropes. You guys
Free
got
labor.
cabbage and
Yeah.
tractors. Yeah.
It's a genius. It's some though I would do something about that. It's
For
a great
sure.
yeah, it's because you said it's like free labor and everybody they're paying you to do their
Yeah.
labor, right? So yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's the
Yeah.
solution. That's the solution to our problems. The next
And
wave.
just he looks like he looks like the way you shot him and like the way he looks, it's just like there's such a it's a modern film, right? It
Yeah.
is because it's like
Yeah.
you're talking about modern issues and modern but it's all throwback. Even the kitchen, the way you shut the kitchen table, or I'm sure you're doing a lot of B-rolling and you kind of found it in the editing room, but it's really cool, like the way like the old classic milk bottle and the
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like it's just all like in my here's my thought process because I'm like inundated with AI, right? What I do for what I do
Mm.
for a living, and you're like, oh, can robots be doing their work in like 5 years, right?
They could be, but I think that like, again, it's just addressing the issues of the way that the thing is that what part of the problem that I find with modern technology or modern solutions to ecological problems is
Mm,
that the systems weren't broken. If you think about civilizations like the Aztec or the Mexica as they were called in Mexico, they had a civilization of 13 or 14 million people who were subsiding on food that they were growing. And so there is systems and there is ways that it works. Of course, there would be ways to make it work quicker and faster, but that might not necessarily. What you miss is the the element of connection with the soil that these farmers have. They're listening to what's happening. It's a symbiotic relationship that they have with the soil. So they're catching things that other people might miss,
yeah,
and they're really focused. If you talk with a farmer who works in this way, he's not growing vegetables, he's nurturing soil. That's the conversation he's going to have with you. And so I think that yes, we could,
yeah.
but I think we also have to slow down a little bit and understand that we could all do this.
Well,
Um,
I 100% agree with you. And basically, and I think what I guess the point is about, I gave a capitalistic answer. I gave a money-making answer, right? Like,
yeah,
and basically these guys, they have to make a living, right? And, but at the
yeah.
same time, they're not doing it for the money, dare I say, right? Like there's something deeper there, right?
Not at all, but I think that this is a pretty esoteric uh conversation obviously to have, but like what are even if we're talking about making money as human beings, really what we're talking about is just having the things that we need to live at the end of the day, right?
Yeah,
Like there's shiny objects that are superfluous and we don't really need, but really the reason we're trying to make money is because we want to live. And I think that if you could baseline your existence with I need food, I need water, I need a roof over my head, then you can kind of start to understand the people that live that way. And when you start to live that way, we try to do it as much as possible in my family as well. And it's there's a lot of noise, right, in everyday life when we're chasing things. And so to see these guys thriving, I say this, we just got done in Mexico, and I've been there now since 2018, and even before that I was traveling quite a bit and meeting with farmers. The poorest people who or quote unquote poorest people in a fiat currency sense seem to be the happiest as long as they know that they have food on the table and they have their family close by. And I
yeah,
think that's one of the lessons that we're trying to portray in this series is like, if we can all put in check a little bit. There's a lot of shit going on in the world right now, and there's a
yeah.
lot of capitalism collapsing around us, and these are the guys who are going to lift us up as they have historically.
You think so? Yeah. Well, like, because there's obviously the bigger topic here where like if you look at the fast food industry, it became capitalistic and all of a sudden we needed more meats, we needed more potatoes, we needed more, and that's when it became kind of like, became went on steroids, I guess, right? Like literally.
Yeah.
And it became like we got to fat these like we like it was well money, 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 money. And then it didn't, but where did it ended up? Where we ended up with it, right? And it's like
Yeah.
from the basic happiness standpoint, you're right. I think that that's what COVID taught me. It was like if you just go in the basics, if you just like get down to the basics,
Yeah.
then all the
I
noise goes away.
I'm connected. Listen, I have to fight. I this has been a long process for me as well. I would say probably the last decade or so I've spent in my life trying to beat down the ego because it exists in all of us and we all want to succeed, right? We all want to win an award. We all want to be the best we can at what we do, but
Sure.
I think that the intention in the end it has to be happiness, it has to be life. We miss so much of it. As a chef, I spent the majority of my 20, late teens, 20s just blindly putting in 16 hours a day because I thought I was going to be perfect. I was going to work harder than everybody else. I was going to get more
Yeah.
than everybody else. I was going to have the car. I lived in West Hollywood. I felt all those, um, I felt all those demons kind of pulling at me and it's still hard to wake up every day and be like, you don't really need that thing. You don't really need the new car. You don't really need the new watch. The one you got is fine. Um, of course, they're nice things to have, but again, that's capitalism pulling at us, right? We've all kind of been trained into that system. And so it's an interesting conversation to have. And I don't think there's a right answer. I think that for me, what I hope to achieve with the films that we make and that we continue to make, um, we can try to help everybody else make a decision and see that it is possible. If you do want to live that way, it is possible. It is possible to be happy and it is possible to live a life. But again, I always have this, I always have when I have this conversation with people, I say, 150 years ago, 100 years ago, which isn't that long ago in the
No.
history of the world, farmers didn't wake up to go till the soil because they had to pay their cell phone bill. They woke up and tilled the soil because they had to feed their community. And somehow in less than a century, we've lost that idealism. And so the work, it's not really work for them. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. No, yeah. There's a like, and that's what I like about, like I said, you're not there. All these things are digging in the film, like, and it's all about how we're reacting. Like it's as I'm reacting to it, right? And then you can just go
Yeah.
on the surface and go, oh, this is this family who owns this farm, and look what they're doing. That's pretty cool, right? Like, it's, you
Yeah,
know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Yeah, yeah,
There's tons to glean from it. And the
yeah,
crazy thing is like if you like even though what you're talking about the way they're harvesting, they sell in every organic store and co-op in Vermont and even some of the bigger stores they're selling their kimchi in. So they're producing a ton of kimchi and that's actually what's funding their life to be able to live a subsistence lifestyle. They don't sell any other products from their farm. Everything else is for themselves. So the kimchi was just a vet like, you could say a capitalist lever to pull so that they could continue to live a subsistence lifestyle.
yeah. So did you, when you were doing your journey to be a chef in the 20s, did you ever imagine that you were going to be a filmmaker?
I mean, I don't think that I ever imagined that I was going to be a filmmaker. I think I've always been really connected to film. I think probably the first film that really, I loved watching TV. It was my escape in the madness of my household as a kid. And, the first film that really made me think about films in general was Taxi Driver. I think I maybe was 13 when I watched it. And still to this day, it's one of my favorite films, just the way the camera moves and the story it's telling. And so, it's always been like a pipe dream to make film and now fusing the two together it feels great. It's wonderful. I'm 40. I'm kind of looking at the next chapter of my life and this is really what I want to do. I like connecting with people and having conversations and I think film is a beautiful art form and again it's another thing that capitalism has come into and we kind of get these it's great that we have guys people like you who are really dedicated to telling artful stories and in appreciating the art form of making film rather than just what's the next box office hit and so I like that. I like that you can still you can just go out with like we have a small crew. We got a Sony FX6 and some lenses on it, and we can go out in the field and we can do this thing, and what can come from it is a beautiful story, and it doesn't have to be a big production with a full crew. So it's a cool art form. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think I ever would have thought in my mid 20s that this is what I'd be doing.
If you have a point of view and you have talents, you can make a good film, right? So, and you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
both
yeah,
your
yeah.
because you're the cinematography is fantastic in your film. He's really he knows what he's doing. I guess Ryan.
Yeah,
He
Ryan actually went to school. The cool thing is Ryan went to school for journalism and he switched in his first year to film and just fell in love with it. And he actually teaches at a local college, Champlain College here in Burlington, Vermont. And it's the same as me. You know, one of the reasons why this works is because we set out and he doesn't need we don't need money attached to it. We're just going to go get the work done. And if money comes from it, that's cool. And if not, we're just going to do it as long as we can out of our own pockets and with a little bit of money that bleeds in from whatever sources we can get it from. So that's another cool thing, I think, you know, for him as a filmmaker. There's no capitalist objectives attached to or financial objectives attached to making the
Mhm.
film. It really truly is art for him. And so that's why we get such beautiful product out of these films that we're making, you know.
So where did you this is like kind of almost like a I would like just to get into the like the marketing of it. Speaking of capitalism, but basically there's a great series here in your film like in your
Yeah.
this like I'm just thinking from a producer's perspective. It's like there's a and this is a great proof of concept. And it's because like there's so much nuance, obviously, right? Like we're kind of hammering that home, but there's so much there in this like in this 15 minutes, and it's all about like these people. How did you like, how did you kind of contact the Flack family to allow them to shoot them?
So flax specifically, when I came back to, the first thing I do when I go somewhere is I start talking to farmers because I make food, and so I want to see what they're doing. And usually I go out in the field. This is what I do anyways when I go somewhere. If I'm gonna ask a farmer to work with him, I'll usually go out and work a day in the field with him to see what he's doing and to understand the product
Well,
and
that's
how we
pretty
can work
cool.
with it.
Okay,
Yeah,
go
and
ahead. Yeah.
and and so this is just like a natural thing. Like it doesn't. There's nothing unnatural about it. It's not framed up, and so. I met him because I had a friend. I had met a guy. Well, there's a book that really changed my perspective on food called American Terroir by an author named Rowan Jacobson who actually lives in Vermont. And I reached out to him to do a podcast. We did a podcast. I told him about this series that we wanted to do, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you got to go up to Flack Family Farm and see what they're doing." And so we went up there, and you know, you had commented on it looking like old timey and perfect, and Zach being the perfect character. Me and Zach just from day one had the same ethos and started having these really long conversations. And we were like, "This is the perfect episode." So now me and Ryan have, when we go out in the field, we call them, you know, like the closing lines from Zach. We call them this a Zach Brown moment. So now when we go out in the field and we get something or I'm in conversation with somebody, I just look at the camera and I tell them that was a ZBM, and that's how we know we got the content. So it was really just that. It was me looking for farms to work with. It was me having conversations with local people, and that's kind of how we do all of our work. Is they're people that I have some connection with or that we find through mutual friends.
So Roland Jacobson, that's the writer of the book that you're I just wrote that
Yeah,
down while you're talking. He's the
Rowan
that's
Jacobson.
Roland
Yeah.
Jacobson. Okay. What's the book called?
Rowan, Rowan, Rowan Jacobson, and
Oh, Rowan. Okay, yeah. Go
the
ahead.
book is called American Terroir. He also wrote a book called Geography of Oysters, which was a James Beard
Okay.
award-winning book. He wrote a book called The Fruitless Fall about colony collapse disorder. That's kind of what he writes about is food and why it grows where it grows and what's its impact on the ecosystems that it subsides in.
So not only do you have the shots of the farm, but you also went down to his, I guess, his basement, his domain, and
Yeah.
you had like a long sequence there, I guess, right? What was your reasoning about doing that? Going
So
down to
this
the
is
basement?
actually so this basement has been there since the beginning of the farm, and that's actually where they make the kimchi. So they take the product out of the field, they bring it and process it they shred it and cut the vegetables
Yeah.
and get all the stuff ready to go, and then they take it into the basement and they ferment it in that basement. And one of the really cool things, I've been studying fermentation for a long time as well. One of the really cool things about fermentation is that the microbes are actually in the air. We're just capturing those microbes, and the salt kind of inhibits bad microbes from growing while the good microbes propagate. But these guys just have that in, if you're in an area where you're fermenting, those microbes live in the walls and in the air down there. So it was so important for us to capture that because it's really, compared to all the other kimchi and fermented products that are on the market. Here, it's really the best, and the reason it's the best is because they do the same thing every single year in the same place, and those microbes are just living in the wall. And you know, he's got this stick that he mixes the kimchi with that he calls Lucy. It's his nickname for the stick, and it's the same stick even that he's mixing it with. So
Yeah.
it was such, you know, the idea was, how does a product come from field to process to shelf, but without telling you, like, today we're at the farm and we're
Yeah.
harvesting cabbage and then we're going into the basement and then we're doing this thing. We wanted to leave the option open for people to ask us questions and have conversations, because we really feel like that's where the nuance is, you know?
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's really, it's just, it's interesting. It's an interesting like whole kind of world that these people live in. So, and how many you made other films since like this one?
Yeah, so we just released one that we did with grass-fed cattle company. It's a regenerative pasture in Charlotte, Vermont, and then we've got another one coming out in probably this month. The next one will be out, and then we just shot two in Guerrero, Mexico. That will be the same. You know, they'll be field report. They'll be in black and white, and we've actually started on another series called Venas Abiertas, or Open Veins, and it's inspired by a book written by Eduardo Galeano, an author from Uruguay who wrote the book was released in 1971, and it was about Latin America and how the open veins represented the extraction of resources from Latin America and how it's perceived as a poor country, but actually it's provided wealth through minerals, oil, all of those things, gold and silver to the rest of the world. And so in we're doing the same thing but through the lens of food, because obviously Latin America is now used to provide food for the world because of its cheap labor and cheap land. And so that will be our first color offering, and that'll be in the spring of 2026. But we plan to release probably almost every month, a field report. But we're not sticking, again, because we like the art and we like the pace. We don't want to stick to a timeline. We just want to do it when it feels right, and release it when it feels like we've got what we want and it speaks to us, you know?
So Under the Black Flag is your YouTube channel, right? And you have the
Yeah.
YouTube channel, then you have Substack, and you have a podcast as well.
Yeah, yeah. So the podcast was Cocina Pirata podcast, but I switched it to Under the Black Flag. I have a parent company, so all my food, you know, my restaurants live under this title, Cocina Pirata, because my first restaurant was called Pirata, and it was a tasting menu restaurant. And essentially, it's the idea is that, you know, in I've traveled a lot around the world to find my place, and when I cook, they're kind of, you know, the theories and techniques and ideals are kind of like my treasures that I've gathered. And so that's the idea behind the term Pirata, and Cocina Pirata is the parent company of those projects. And then Under the Black Flag lives under that banner, and it's our media arm. I like to do writing, and so I'm working on some writing projects, and Substack is obviously one of those. And then the podcast, now we do a companion podcast um, with every episode of Field Report that we're going to be doing. So there's one up on our YouTube page with Zach. It's also available on Spotify, and that's where we get to dig in. You know, it's an hour and a half conversation, so we get to dig in a little bit deeper to the themes that we were discussing in the film, and that's what we'll continue to do for now. And I'm also going to be doing some one-on-one with the camera, talking about the issues we face in the industrial food complex and some solutions to those issues.
Well, I like your style because it's you're not preaching and you're not like this is what you need to do and what are you guys doing, and you're like you're just kind of like you're kind of a cool guy, and I'm sure you've been told that before, and you're just like you're chill and you're just like you have a passion, but it's not over the top passion. It's like this is what I want to talk about. I got a point of view, I have experience, and this is what I see. And
Yeah.
take in what you want to take in and don't if you don't want to. And I like that. It's cool. It's a good way. It's when we're inundated with all the like all this kind of like in your face stuff, as I used the analogy of your documentary, and it's like it's you too as well. So I can
Yeah.
tell, I can see why you made that film, why you made a film like this, because it's your style, it's your personality.
Yeah, it seems like in the age of information, everybody's opinion is fact, and I just don't think it's true. I don't know the answers. I've seen things that work, and I want to share those things with people in hopes that it inspires them to start thinking a little bit more freely and not just looking at the internet for detailed information.
Well, I've been on the internet for a long time, unfortunately, for 20 years, and this is the future. You're ahead of your time. I think this is where we're headed. I'm very much a pessimistic kind of guy, but I see a certain optimism where all this kind of crazy madness of like your left or your right or your whatever pro or an anti or whatever it is. It's like there's nuance is going to kind of come out of all this craziness, all this shit, and it's going to come out. And you're a guy of like nuance and just let's have a conversation, right? I think that's why people
Yeah.
like podcasts because they could sit back and just listen to somebody for 45 minutes without being told something, right? So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's it. I think there's a glass ceiling too. I think there's a glass ceiling. Like we can't have everybody can't be an influencer, right? And everybody doesn't
yeah,
a lot of people just don't even really know what they're talking about. And I
Mhm.
know enough and I know about the science, but I know that science changes always, history changes
Yeah,
always, our understanding of all those things changes constantly. And so to just have like for me, that's why it's amazing. Like what better life can you live than to be able to have conversations with people that inspire you and share
yeah.
those conversations with others?
Because that's the answer, right? The answer is that we don't know all the answers. And I think that like not to go off on something on a tangent, but basically I think that's what we learned with COVID. It was that people wanted the politicians or the scientists, whatever, like they wanted to give us an answer right away. And it's not that simple, right? And it takes a long time. And that's when danger happens, when we want quick results, quick answers,
Yeah.
right? So yeah.
Yeah. And when somebody says that, I mean, scientific theory is legitimately somebody coming up with a theory and testing it until it's proven wrong or
Yeah.
right. And they're all, like I said, they're always changing. So it's like no one knows any of the answers.
Nobody
When
knows
you find
anything.
out,
Yeah.
when you find out the meaning of life, maybe peace will come finally to this world.
Well, look at food, right? Like they're told us to eat eggs every day, then they told us not to, then they told us to, and then they told us it keeps going back and forth, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So one last question before I leave you, because I know I've been with you for a long time, and this is a very superficial question from a guy who's a chef. What do you think of the show The Bear? How is that like is it in the world of what you did, or I'm just curious?
I never watched it until my wife said she wanted to watch an episode,
Okay.
and I watched an episode, and I can tell you that kitchens are very intense, but it's another this is another show for me that's an issue because it's just glorifying this madness. And I've never been in a kitchen. I've been in a lot of kitchens, and I think that there's some very toxic behaviors and there's some very toxic things happening, but they don't always all happen all at once.
Sure.
And so it's a little bit too much. And I think sensorily it's the same thing. It's like fat, everything's in your face, everything's too fast. The reason people love it is because that's the place we are in the world. It feeds this like desire for excess. And I mean, I think that it was well made and well put together, but I don't think it tells the true story of all kitchens. I think it tells the true story of very few kitchens, not the
Okay.
vast majority.
So, but it doesn't have like it's sort of like making a film about film. It's like it's ridiculous, or like an ER doctor saying this is not how it is in the ER. They're speeding it up, right? But
Yeah, for sure.
there's a core kind of emotion that they tell, I guess. But I guess they're missing the mark. Like,
I mean, I think that some people have those emotions, but I'll tell you, like, and this might be I I never struggled with it because my thought was always there's people that get into it for the wrong reason, just like everything. Again, going back to this, like a farmer gets up to till the field because he wants to feed his community and his family.
yeah,
I loved doing what I did, and so even when it was hard, I never had these feelings of I'm in the wrong place or I'm doing the wrong thing. And if I ever had that feeling, I would have just found another job. And so I think that people are glorifying chef. I mean, 20 years ago, I 26 years ago, 27 years ago when I started, it there wasn't a Food Network. It wasn't cool to
yeah,
be a chef. So people weren't chasing this dream. And there was some people that were, but there's a lot of people who are creative and there's a lot of people who are thinking collaboratively in the kitchen. And those are the people that are really pushing the needle forward. There's a lot of issues with the food service industry. I'll get into those things on the YouTube channel in the
yeah,
coming weeks, which I'm working on right now. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I think like it's just like anything you put on TV and you're trying to get attention from this generation, there's a lot of gas poured on
Gotcha.
it, and so I think, yeah, to me, it's like clickbait. It's like the same idea as clickbait. It's like, yes, some of those things exist, but come on, guys, let's
Okay.
let's not have those conversations.
Because what I did think they nailed, what I do think is still going on was that is they nailed it is that how to run a business and basically the stress of running the business and have being on your mind all the time and like one bad day can like I thought they kind of nailed that right where like
Yeah,
in starting a restaurant the like it's I don't know why would anybody start a restaurant like it's like for me it's like I don't have much overhead but there's all overhead
yeah. I
it's
mean, this is this
yeah
is this is where the issues really arise. It's
yeah
like you don't. I mean, restaurants originally were just places where weary travelers would rest their head and get some food to eat, right? So it was somebody's house that you were walking into, and that should really be the reason you start a restaurant if you're going to, is that you want to be working all the time. What's happened is now we have investors and we have owners and we have minimums to meet, and what ends up happening is the people at the bottom of that chain suffer because the people at the top don't really want to do the work and they want to make the most of the money. So yes, for sure that element exists, and yes, for sure I think they nailed that side of it.
yeah
But again, I don't know why anybody would get into it. I think I do because I'm a little bit deranged maybe from
yeah
childhood. I grew up in a family that was surrounded by food. My grandfather owned a restaurant, so it was kind of part of my blood, part of my DNA. But yeah, it's a rough business to be in.
well then listen I can have you on forever because then you could talk about Uber Eats and like those
Oh
like
yeah.
who's really making money with that and like like doesn't seem anybody
Not
is yeah
No, no, the whole thing is just
yeah
it's gonna spiral, and there's gonna be. I really believe, and this is another thing that we'll get into, like I said on the YouTube channel, is I do think there's gonna be a collapse, and I think a lot of people are gonna suffer. There's a lot of lessons that were not learned during COVID, specifically when COVID let up. People had more money in their bank account than they probably did when they were working, and they'd been locked up. So it was almost like instead of learning the lessons and slowing down the pace, everybody just sped up to capture the money. It's a capitalist issue as most of our issues in this world are. And so,
yeah
I think the future is slowing down. The future is nuance. The future is very specific places that do very specific things and provide sustenance for their community.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I love to see your next films and I love to keep going. I just subscribed to your channel and I'll keep tabs on you. I don't say this often, but I think you're on to something really cool and I love it. And it's like I said, because it's just you're just cool about it. That's all I can say. You're just cool about it. And that's the highest praise I can give. So
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much for the work you're doing too. It keeps people like us inspired, and it's just a great platform, and I think more people need to be doing what you guys are doing too. It's very valuable for us. This is why we do it. We do it so that we can connect with people and touch people and make them think. So thank you guys very much. Thank you and your whole team. We really
thank you.
appreciate your work.
All right, man. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, brother.